Welcome back to KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM, the Joe Miller Show. We have Susan Payne on the line. She was interviewed on the Mark Levin Show several days ago. We put up a story about her and what she had to say. Participated in a teleconference with the White House on immigration, illegal amnesty issues, and had some shocking things to say. One of the things, Susan, that you talked about in the last segment was how some of these groups want to change Thanksgiving. Give us a lowdown on that.
Well, they felt that once this amnesty mill was completed and these immigrants were turned in, I don't even like using the word immigrant, Joe, because you can't be an immigrant unless you've been given permission to emigrate. So they're aliens. They're illegal aliens. And they said that once this was all finished, there should be another executive order that changes Thanksgiving to celebrate Immigrants Day. And I was about ready to blow my top when I heard that. I was going back over my notes during the break, and really what I've got here is just names of people and where they were calling in from, like Chicago, L.A., and they, I guess, would represent their groups, but somebody can't called in from Burlington, Vermont, and talked about being in partnership with local institutions. But everything in Chicago, everything was about how can we make life better for an illegal alien, and basically kicking the citizen, out to the curb.
So any opposition at all, like, for example, when one of the groups suggested that we have celebrate Immigrants Day rather than Thanksgiving? Oh,
no, they just thanked them for their suggestions. And they laughed and thought it was a good idea and thanked them for the suggestions. But to me, as an American, and as an American my husband served in Vietnam during I was offended by this stuff.
There is a move afoot, and we talked about it earlier on the show, about some gun rights organizations. Gun Owners of America, for example, is now rating congressional persons' perspective on amnesty as a gun rating issue. And part of their argument is that, look, if we allow people into the country that got here illegally, they're likely to have different perspectives on some of our fundamental rights. And I identify with that. I mean, I have a son-in-law that's a Mexican national, and, of course, he's not applied for citizenship. He has applied for a visa. But, you ask him about gun rights, he doesn't have any concept of the Second Amendment being there to challenge tyranny. And, of course, the Gun Owners of America, Larry Pratt, recognizes that you're going to have a political impact. Of course, the Democrats, Phyllis Schlafly, put out an editorial this weekend discussing the Democrats' desire to have the aliens come in to vote, because that way they get, obviously bigger coalitions. They can elect those people that, again, will have opinions that are adverse to some of these fundamental values. Did you have any type of idea that the people that were participating in this call had any concept of some of those fundamental rights, or did you just think that they were all in this call to see what kind of benefits they could get for these people that were here illegally?
Oh, absolutely, about what kind of benefits they can get. They had no – I don't believe that the people representing the immigrants groups were really interested in doing anything except navigating the system. That was said quite a few times, and I remember I was talking to Jessica Vaughn of Center for Immigration Studies about the calls, and when I told her, the slogan ought to be for this task force ought to be navigate, not assimilate. And really that's it. They're just interested in how do they get through these benefits, how do they get what they think is coming to them. And another thing that they mentioned was that the fees, in the past when you get these documents to go on the path of legalization, you've had to pay cash for those fees. You've had to pay certain monies to the government to go down this path. Well, they thought that the fees should be cut in half. They also thought that you should be able to use credit cards and not have to pay cash. And you're going to love this, and that state and local governments ought to be willing to cut them low interest or no interest loans for these so they can pay for these documents.
Well, even creating additional inducements to have more people come over illegally. So was there any sense of urgency? I mean, obviously Obama almost in lame duck status now, a couple of years left. Hopefully somebody else that has a different perspective on illegal aliens. Did any of the call participants have a sense that, look, we got to get this stuff accomplished within the next couple of years because we may not have a friendly in the White House? in the next election.
Oh, I felt that there was a sense of urgency, absolutely. But I felt like they weren't just saying, oh, wow, Obama's given us this great opportunity. I felt like they knew it was coming. I felt like they knew the plan. It had been well orchestrated for years. There was no surprise in any of this. The surprise was me and Ted. The surprise was the delegate from Maryland, Delegate McDonough, who couldn't believe it. I mean, every once in a while, you just get stunned by the audacity of these people and the insidious nature of what they're doing to this country. And our elected officials, like the illustrious John Boehner today, pushing through that bill that I think puts that court ruling in Texas in jeopardy.
Right. I mean, anytime that you've got funding for an illegal act, I mean, the president's already indicated that ruling doesn't really make much of a hill of beans difference to him. They're continuing their amnesty march despite that. But, I just think that the rule of law itself has been so debased in the country, given what this administration has done. And with the president's statement, or the White House spokesperson's statement, that the president is actually considering tax hikes now under an executive order, it appears that they've just adopted this approach, that there are no parameters of law that restrain them. And everybody else that's getting all the benefit from these things seems to understand that as well, especially those that were on that teleconference with you.
Yeah, and let me tell you two new items that have surfaced. I got an email from USCIS that announced a program that started 2 weeks ago. Remember when we had all those unaccompanied minors coming in across the border this summer?
Right.
Well,
from
with
Central
the
America
election
primarily.
year, with election year coming up, I don't think Obama wants to see that again. So what they've announced that they're doing now is, if you are in this country, even if you're illegally in the country, and you have family members in Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, those were the three main countries coming through, you can now apply for refugee status for your family members when they're living in their home countries, in their homes, not being abused by the government. You can apply for refugee status, and guess what, Joe? We go in and pick them up for you. So there will be no more people coming across the border like they did last year. You won't even know that they're coming in by airplane or however they're bringing it. The government is bringing the refugees in, declaring a person a refugee in their home country. The second thing we found out today is there is this group called the International Network for Public Schools. And what they're doing around the country is they're taking public school money, and they're going to do it here in Maryland, 2 public schools, which we have found out. They're taking public school funding, creating high schools, elementary schools, middle schools for immigrant children, and you can't go there if you're not an immigrant, and you'll be speaking Spanish only. Now,
no assimilation whatsoever.
Right, and we have brought this to the attention of legal people, and this violates, we believe, the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court ruling in 1954, separate but equal, and Judicial Watch is not only going after that, they are now developing a full-scale investigation into this task force. What has Obama been doing since November with these people, and what kind of money's been leveraged, and what is really going on with this? So Judicial Watch is a good friend of mine.
Well, Susan, I appreciate that, and we're at the top of the hour. If you could please provide me with some follow-up information, we'll get it up at joemiller.us so that our listeners know. And if you've got a contact point for them to get a hold of you, we can put that out as well. Just send us what you want. We'll make sure people hear about it. I mean, the news that you provided by kind of taking an inside approach to this, by telling us what went on in the teleconferences, getting on the radio, telling the world is what has to happen. Americans must be educated about what this administration is doing and destroying the country from the inside out. We have more great guests coming up. Tomorrow, Rod Perry will be back on with us. Stay with us, The Joe Miller Show daily, 2 to 4 p.m.